Welcome back to the best division in football with your boys Awthentik and The Beard, the best television show not on TV. Cowboys and Eagles fans, come take a seat on the couch with your boy Awthentik and The Beard. All NFC East teams are officially eliminated now. Cowboys lost to myself and the Green Bay Packers. Philadelphia Eagles end up losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers one time. Big shout out to the Lions, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Texans, man. C.J. Stroud playing some really good football on advancing to the divisional round. Definitely going to be the more interesting round. Wild card weekend was kind of full with a bunch of blowouts here one time, but definitely looking forward to this upcoming week. But today we're going to be talking about the Dallas Cowboys being upset by the Packers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers blowing the socks off of those Philadelphia Eagles. Y'all know what it is, man. Let me bring in the best co-host in the country, the strong side to the left side duo, my brother from another mother. Big shout out to my Dukes one time in the building. The Beard is backstage vibing. I see you, dog. How you living, fam?
Hey, shout out to the Beats department. This joint right here is a banger. Listen,
what's cracking, man?
I love playoff football. I wore my NFC East playoff starter kit. This is a very nice fishing vest. Since now the entire NFC East will be
gone fishing.
No
more getting reeled in. No more getting reeled in.
This is why we're Awthentik in the Beard. I mean, that was not planned, by the way,
at all, man.
Great job. Listen, it's an exciting time for me. I love playoff football. I think there's a lot of excitement, and I think it's really good to see some of these young, talented players making some moves. A lot of people were really happy about the Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys going down the way they were. I'm going to be honest with you. I was not one of those people necessarily.
Yeah, I wasn't really either. You know how I do on Twitter, man. I just throw things out to kind of test the temperature, and I was New York Giants won the Super Bowl, and people thought I was being dead serious. They're like, yeah, man, screw the Eagles. And I'm like, I get it, man. But if you watch this show, you know that stuff doesn't really it don't affect me one way or another if my team's not in the mix or playing one of those teams.
Yeah, because I think that I know a lot of people think I'm making this up, but I'm not. It's just I wasn't necessarily cheering for the Cowboys to lose. I was cheering for Jordan Love because for those of you that have been watching this show for a long time, you'll know that I have been a Jordan Love guy since 2020. I coming out of the draft, there was parts of him that reminded me of Patrick Mahomes when he was in college. Not necessarily Patrick Mahomes when he was a pro.
He showed a lot of that in his game, too, like the off-platform throws and whatnot, pressure in his face, still sitting there delivering the passes that he needed to make, the Green Bay Packers come out on top. That was an excellent performance by him, and I think the numbers really don't say it as much either.
Yeah, I just efficient. I mean, we're going to talk about this, obviously, but it was just completely different in a complete game from a team and a very incomplete game from another team. And it's interesting because there's going to be a lot of similarities and stats in a lot of these teams that advance in playoffs. And, we talk about it, your defense, yes, you have to have the quarterback. I saw the tweet going around where they were talking about you can win with an average or okay quarterback.
I retweeted that. Somebody said that again to me today. They're just like, you don't need a franchise quarterback to win a Super Bowl. And I'm like, y'all really not tapped into the game. I mean, just look from now until 2000. You might have 3 quarterbacks that weren't a franchise guy or a guy who's headed for the Hall of Fame that won a Super Bowl. I mean, I know Tom Brady dominated, that era. But even still, you just have Joe Flacco, Nick Foles, and then you could go all the way back to Trent Dilfer with the Baltimore Ravens, and that's about it.
Yeah, and every quarterback that's left in the playoffs right now outside of Brock Purdy is a first-round quarterback. So, it's there's a lot we're going to learn from these playoffs. And then obviously, there's a lot going on outside of the playoffs right now. The Giants, obviously making some moves. Commanders finally announcing Adam Peters as our general manager. And then, there's a lot of coaching vacancies that are going to be filled, a lot of interviews going on. So it's going to be an interesting, time moving forward. We got another week of games I'm super excited about. But I am very super excited to talk about these two games. I'm very super excited to talk about these two games with not only my brother Awthentik, but each and every one of you in the chat. We appreciate all the love and all the support to everybody in the chats across all the platforms. That's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, right here on the YouTubes. We appreciate it.
I like that. Your I'm so excited vibes remind me of Jesse Spano.
Oh my God, when she was taking the speed pills.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, she was in that Joan Wildin'. I didn't really know what was going on back then. I ain't gonna lie. As an adult, yeah, definitely going down. But let's go ahead and get right into it, man. This should be a short show. We just got two games to talk about. We'll start with the Philadelphia Eagles, who traveled to Tampa Baker to take on the Buccaneers one time. All right, man, this was a matchup that I thought the Philadelphia Eagles were going to be able to kind of get back on track a little bit, and that was definitely not the case in this one. Big shout out to Baker Mayfield, man. I think that dude played an excellent game, a great finish to the season as well. The number 5 Eagles, man, they lost to the number 4 Bucs now, 32-9. This one was an absolute blowout. 2 blowout losses for Jalen Hurts in the playoffs versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, they weren't the Tampa Baker Buccaneers in the first blowout loss, but they lost 31-15 in 2021. And now you fell to, the Tampa Bay Bucs one more time, 32-9 here. The Bucs led at half, 16-9. And it kind of felt like they were letting the Eagles hang around in this one early, I thought, but then they were outscored in the second half, 16-0. The Eagles' possessions on the day, 4 punts, 2 turnover on downs, 1 safety, which that was, to me, the worst play of the game from Jalen Hurts. They had 1 touchdown and 1 field goal to add to that. Now, 0 turnovers, not 1 turnover from either of the teams in this one, unless you count the turnover on downs by the Philadelphia Eagles. The Bucs did dominate time of possession. I've talked about that. The Beard has talked about that so many times on this podcast. The way to beat the Philadelphia Eagles is dominate the time of possession. That's what they did in this one. And I thought Rachaad White's 72 yards rushing was very effective, 4.0 yards per carry. And, when we've talked about the game plan on how to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, it's about committing to the run. We talked about that with the Brian Robinson performance with the Washington Commanders just a year ago when y'all were like one of the only teams to beat the Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. I believe it was 22 starts. It was the only loss that he had within those 22 starts. Spoke on their offense being broken, but I will admit this. I did think that the Philadelphia Eagles were going to get back on track against the Bucs. I thought that defense had a couple of lanes that were going to be open for the Eagles. That was not the case here. The Bucs rush defense really good in this game. But I talked about play design, play calling, execution, and situational ball being a problem for the Eagles offense this year. And, I focused majority of our preview show on explosive plays when we talked about this matchup. Talked about in the last 7 games of the regular season, the Eagles didn't have a pass play going over 40 yards, not one time. Last season, they had the 3rd most passing plays over 40 yards with 15. This year, that number was cut in nearly half with just 8 pass plays over 40 yards. The Eagles had just 9 plays over 25 yards in the last 7 games of the regular season, and they were the only team in the league to not have a 40-yard pass play since week 10. Talked about Jalen Hurts and the interceptions and whatnot. It wasn't a big factor in this game. But he has thrown the most interceptions since 1988 as far as Philadelphia Eagles quarterbacks go. Now, there were a lot of things in this game that bothered me, especially if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan or if you think that Jalen Hurts is a pretty damn good quarterback, which I do think Jalen Hurts is a really good quarterback. To see the Eagles not be able to adjust in this game was extremely frustrating. And we'll talk about Nick Sirianni a little bit later in this one, but they pretty much ran RPO the entire game. And they had no answers. We saw it in the New York Giants matchup, the last game of the season when Wink Martindale was throwing the kitchen sink at Jalen Hurts. They had no matchup for that, right? They had no way to try to counter that. And having no A.J. Brown in this one, I think that really hurt them a lot as well because it seems like Nick Sirianni and the rest of his coaching staff for the Philadelphia Eagles, they bank on Jalen Hurts getting rid of the ball quickly, relying on these one-on-one matchups when the blitz is coming in. Either Jalen Hurts is going to have to find a way to escape on his own or find a way to throw it up to A.J. Brown in these one-on-one matchups. And Devonta Smith showed up in this game, okay? You did have, one half of the field, I'd say, as far as the wide receiver core go, showed up in this one. But Julio Jones was knocked out of this game with a concussion early on. So they were relying on guys like Quez Watkins and a few other dudes that, we've talked about is they need a third guy. They don't have a third guy in that wide receiver core. Devonta Smith, 8 receptions for 148 yards. I thought he was the best player on the field in this game, period. Now, I also talked about how Jalen Hurts was not at fault for most of the problems that are going on with the Philadelphia Eagles offense. You look at the numbers, and they're not even that bad. It's kind of crazy considering he was blitzed on damn near every play, it felt like, in this game. And the Bucs had a free rusher damn near every time, but Hurts was 25 of 35 for 250 yards, 1 touchdown. He was only sacked 3 times in this game. I thought that was extremely surprising because they had the pressure on him throughout this game. And the third down numbers, I'm going to get to them. I know you want to talk about third down. Goddamn, third down was horrendous in this game. But the lack of commitment to the running game, right? And I thought that, when we looked at the Week 3 matchup between the Bucs and the Philadelphia Eagles, a lot of that was predicated on DeAndre Swift and how he played in that game. He had over 130 yards from scrimmage in that one. The Eagles ran the ball 15 times in this game for 42 yards. They were scared to run the ball on third down. I tweeted it out in the first half. Every time it got to third and short, Nick Sirianni went to the passing game. And the Bucs in return would blitz Jalen Hurts, get that pressure in his face. And now you have third and short where your quarterback's throwing the ball 25, 35 yards down the field and just couldn't find a way to connect. Swift's longest run in this game was 17 yards. He had 10 rushes for 34 yards. He was averaging 3.4 yards per carry. Now, this the part that was the most shocking to me. His longest run was a 17-yard run. If you take away that 17-yard run, the Eagles averaged 1.7 yards per carry. 14 rushes for 25 yards outside of that 17-yard run. And, when I talked about Brett Coleman's video and the things that worried him about the Philadelphia Eagles offense, he talked about how they run the ball and all of their running plays coming out of the shotgun. In this game, they tried to kind of give you a little bit of the pistol as well with the running back behind Jalen Hurts. Same deal, right? You take the running back. He's not on my left or my right. He's right behind me. And Brett Coleman had said that the Eagles run a high school offense. I told y'all about this 3 or 4 weeks ago, I believe it was, talking about every run coming from the shotgun. They were 21st in the league at generating explosive runs at just 1.7 explosive runs per game. Just 14 running plays under center all year. I did not see one rushing attempt in this game come from under center. The Eagles also having the lowest rate of shift in motion of any team in the NFL. They were the only team in the NFL that was under 30% pre-snap motion in the entire league. And when you look at the way that DeAndre Swift's year went, it looked pretty good this year. Over 1,000 yards, over 1,200 yards from scrimmage, which is really good. The Beard questioned the amount of attempts he was getting and the amount of touches that he was getting. Just 14.3 rushing attempts per game. He had 39 receptions for 214 receiving yards and 6 total touchdowns on a year. Now, to see the Philadelphia Eagles have absolutely no answer for the pressure that was put on Jalen Hurts, this is why you get people on Twitter and on other social media platforms thinking that they could call the plays. Listen, man, I know some people that play Madden that could have called a better game than the Philadelphia Eagles did. With the blitz coming on Jalen Hurts, you would see at times they were running like a Jason Garrett type of offense, like 3 comeback routes, hoping that somebody could win a one-on-one matchup. I'm sure Devonta Smith was getting the majority of the double teams from this Bucs defense. To go 0 for 9 on third down, 0 for 11 on third and fourth down. They were 0 for 2 on fourth down. This goes back to something that we had talked about early on in the year. No hot reads. And I got this from J.T. O'Sullivan from the quarterback school because I've looked at every one of his videos on Jalen Hurts. I love watching these videos from the QB school. Y'all know I've recommended this throughout the year because he does multiple videos throughout the year. So you can go back and look at the first video on Jalen Hurts and you can look at the most recent one. The things that J.T. O'Sullivan questioned about the Philadelphia Eagles offense and Jalen Hurts had to do with his mechanics, his upper body mechanics, clicking his feet when he's dropping back and looking to throw, not lining up his shoulders with where he's going to throw. And the number one thing that stood out to me is that he said that for an offense that is playing so well, they have no hot concepts and no hot reads installed for Jalen Hurts. Now, you had Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, leave from the Philadelphia Eagles. They moved on. But to now have their offense pretty much look exactly the same with less pre-snap motion and no hots installed is kind of ridiculous. Even dating back to 2021, one of the plays that I had highlighted where I was like, on Twitter, I said this. I was like, this kind of play that Jalen Hurts made, not many quarterbacks can make this play. And it was only like a 2-yard gain. But literally, as soon as he caught the shotgun snap, edge rusher on the left side of him, completely untouched, clear lane at him, doesn't end up getting to him. He spins off it, runs out of bounds, picks up 2 yards. But not many quarterbacks are going to get out of that type of situation. And I think Nick Sirianni is relying too much on Jalen Hurts' natural skill set and natural ability to be able to find a way out of these situations. We have focused on the NFC East, for 5 years now. And I watch just about every football game across the NFL that I can possibly watch. Seeing teams like the Green Bay Packers go out here and scheme their wide receivers open in that game against the Dallas Cowboys. Seeing what Brian Dable did for Daniel Jones last year. Even seeing what Eric Bieniemy does with a guy like Sam Howell this year. Scheming things up. There were some of those red zone plays that I love that Eric Bieniemy would scheme up for Sam Howell in that Washington Commanders offense. You look at what they're doing over there now with the Colts with Steichen and guys like Gardner Minshew and what he was doing there with Anthony Richardson before that. You look at what they're doing over there with the Houston Texans with C.J. Stroud. These offensive coordinators are innovating, and they're making things easier for the quarterback position. I think the Philadelphia Eagles have one of the worst offensive philosophies that I've seen in the entire NFL. And to not have any type of adjustment after 6-7 weeks of proof that teams are now figuring out how to stop the Philadelphia Eagles by sending the kitchen sink at Jalen Hurts, I think you're doing a major, major disservice to your quarterback. And that's just on that side of the ball. I'm going to talk about the defensive side of the ball just a little bit here before I kick this over to you. Now, the Eagles secondary, I've talked about what's going on over there with the lack of not having Denard Wilson as the defensive backs coach, moving on from their defensive coordinator that ended up with the Cardinals. Why can't I think of my man's name?
Gannon.
I want to say
Gannon.
Rich Gannon, but that's my OG. Joe Gannon? No, John Gannon. John Gannon. Losing him was definitely important. But I do think that, it's more to it than that. We talked about this, on our last couple of episodes. We talked about Denard Wilson losing their coordinators and all that stuff. The poor tackling that I saw from the Philadelphia Eagles, especially in the first half, they did come out in the second half with a little bit more urgency, especially in the third quarter. James Bradbury was just absolutely awful in this game. I heard the announcer in the game say, they benched James Bradbury in favor of the rookie. And then in the fourth quarter, I see James Bradbury out there still getting cooked. I don't know what's going on. Just terrible tackling, and not just in the secondary, on all three levels. Their linebackers missing tackles. At times, you saw the secondary thinking that their linebackers were going to make the tackle and just kind of letting up on the play, and then somebody spins open and gets some more yak on the play. And, we talked about Denard Wilson and his importance to this defensive, the secondary unit over there for the Philadelphia Eagles, who were the number one pass defense last year, and now they've dropped all the way down to 31st, okay? And the Ravens went from 23 to number 6. Baker Mayfield, a guy that I talked about the Giants could have possibly went out there, signed him to a bridge quarterback type of deal like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did, just getting $3 million a year, and this dude is playing like a veteran, a true veteran out here. 22 of 36 on the day for 337 yards and 3 touchdowns. It should have been 4 touchdowns. Mike Evans had the big drop in this game that really could have put this game out of reach early on. 3 touchdown passes to 3 different pass catchers, accurate all day long. And this completion percentage does not show it because Mike Evans was not the only person to have a drop in this game. Baker Mayfield on these little short crosser routes when he was hitting, players like the tight end, Cade Otton, 8 receptions for 89 yards in this game. Some of those windows that he was making throws in, you got the DB right on his hip. You got the linebacker right on his hip. And Baker Mayfield making accurate throws to be able to get his guys in position to get the yak, to get, the necessary yards to convert on third down. I thought Baker Mayfield played a fantastic game. That's what we said it was going to take for the Buccaneers to go out here and win this game. And I think that's exactly what Baker Mayfield did. I question now if the Eagles were as good of a team as we saw for the first 11 games this year where they went 10-1. And which team are they? And I asked you this a couple of weeks ago, and you said they were somewhere between the team that we've seen that was 1-5 to finish the end of the season and the team that was 10-1 to start the season. I'm starting to think that coaching really is the backbone of how teams have now figured out how to break this Philadelphia Eagles team. They were out-schemed in this game. Way too many wide receivers running down the field wide open against this defense, and lack of answers on the offensive side of the ball for Nick Sirianni and the rest of that offensive unit. But what did you see in this matchup?
Well, to touch on Baker first, since, just to keep that on the go, what's to me is so awesome, 337 yards, right? And you think about the weapons that he has, Mike Evans, Godwin, right? But his leading receiver was Awthentik.
Right.
Yardage-wise, right? So it's like, to me, it's like that's when you know a quarterback is just dicing it up. When he has that many passing yards and his leading receiver is Cade Otton with 80-plus yards. So he was throwing it to everybody. I mean, there was people catching touchdown passes that I guarantee you 90% of the people watching the game had no idea who that guy was before he caught that touchdown pass.
Yeah, I would say a few, because Trey Palmer had a couple of games earlier this
year. Yeah, Palmer
where
was good. But the other guy who I had on my DraftKings lineup, and I can't even tell you what his name is right now, unfortunately.
And you saw his name.
Yeah. So it was just, for me, it's weird. It's just weird. And I think we're going to this is going to be something that we're going to look back on when we look back on this season in totality of the NFC East. I've said it a few times, more than a few times in the recent weeks, how naive we all were based upon that schedule that the NFC East had last year has come back to bring all of us back to reality.
I'm not a part of that madness. I'm not.
I know you're not. I know you're not.
Because I was talking about that
early
throughout the year, early on. Like, this
first episode
is crazy. And shout out to Kid Blue, because Kid Blue's the one that put me on. He was like, look. He's like, Awthentik, there's no way I look at the schedule and don't see 8 wins for the New York Giants. I was like, you're right. Like, look at these teams we're facing against. And this year, definitely a 180 reversal in the way the schedule was.
And one of those things that's really big was looking at the quarterbacks that the Eagles faced last year versus the quarterbacks that they faced this year. Just do a comparison of those two, and it's going to really open your eyes. And I mean, think about it. The 2 corners that they had, they're 30-plus years old. They're coming off of injuries. Yeah, they had really good years last year, but against that sort of competition. And the Eagles paid both of them. So It's like, you paid these players, and, you brought in DeAndre Swift. I think we really we looked at that at A.J. Brown and that Devonta Smith 1A, 1B combo, and, you're like, okay, yeah. I mean, You don't even think, do I need a third guy? And as the time goes on throughout the season, you and I talk about it. They need a third guy. They need a third guy. And then A.J. Brown goes down, and you're in the playoffs. You got Devonta Smith, Zacchaeus, Quez, and that's – I mean, look, it's the playoffs. And I don't know if it's just the coaching staff being complacent, if it's the coaching staff being lazy, being stubborn, egotistical, like we don't need to do this and that. I don't know what it is, but it's crazy to me. There's no fire, intensity. And I'm not saying that it's like, I'm not one of those people, when I say this time and time again, I'm not one of those people that will say, oh, the players don't care, or the players aren't playing this and that, right? It's different than that. But it just seems like that when you saw the run that the Eagles made last year, the excitement was there. The fire was there. And a lot of that, I guess, had to do with the big plays. Because what?
I'm glad you said that, man.
What gets a team more excited than a big play, right? It's exciting for us on the couch. But, man, when you see a guy just do a big play, it's like basketball. When you see a guy go up and just yam on somebody, everybody on the bench is like, oh.
Yep.
It's the same thing with football. And we were just kind of missing that from the Philadelphia Eagles, it felt like.
I like the basketball reference you made there, too, because you remember the time when LeBron and them came back on the Golden State Warriors in the finals, 3-1?
Oh, yeah.
They were the only team to ever do that. When you have, just like you said, these explosive plays, you could look at them like Clay and Steph knocking down these 3-pointers from anywhere on the court, right? But then when you don't start to win those matchups, the comparison to a 3-pointer, you're just not knocking them down. You are a shell of yourself. The Philadelphia Eagles look like, not only did they look like a team that just didn't belong, offensively, they look like one of the worst offenses I've seen. And that was very surprising. I think that Nick Sirianni was just relying on his team to win those one-on-one matchups too much, to the point where there was a mental block. It reminds me of me and Madden. Me and you haven't played Madden in a long time, right? But me, when I play Madden, I don't run the ball, ever. I literally run the same play. I go 4 wide receivers, I run 4 verts, and I get to the line, and I just check at the line. I make the audible at the line. In my mind, I be thinking, like, I'm going to find the one-on-one matchup that's going to exploit this defense. I've lost hella games in Madden, and I hate to compare real life to Madden, but I've lost hella games in Madden just off that stubborn mental block of like, nah, my wide receiver's gonna win this. And then he doesn't win it. And I think, you got 6-7 games of proof from Nick Sirianni that this was one of the most stubborn coaching performances probably we've ever seen.
Yeah, and another thing is, too, is like, what did you hear about, especially from, like, non-Eagles fans, right? Because they always want to be like, oh, well, if you put Daniel Jones behind that offensive line that Jalen Hurts has, right? Like, you always hear that, right? And if this, as good as this offensive line is for the Philadelphia Eagles, they're not utilizing the players that they have to their best ability, right? It's interesting because when you're a coach, right, what's your job as a coach is to get the most out of your player, right?
Yeah.
And what it felt like was happening is they weren't necessarily putting the players in the position to make the best plays, right? The using their abilities to the best. They were just letting them do what they do to try and make them look good, basically, as a coaching staff, right? As opposed to doing what they're supposed to do as a coach to put them in the position. Like, an offensive line, if you have a great offensive line, what gets an offensive line hyped?
I mean, just run block and run
block,
over,
right?
mauling people, yeah.
And sometimes it's like, and I say this for, I feel like 3 years, ever since the introduction of RTDB, right? It's like sometimes in today's NFL, the way that they get away from the run so early, it's like the run game is like an art form, right? Like you can't just run the ball 5 times and be like, oh, they're stopping the run today. Not working.
They came out on the first drive, ran it twice, got a first down. I'm like, Nick Sirianni got the message. RTDB.
And then it's just like, wait, what? Where are we doing here now? And
you start losing that lead, right? And the panic settles in. And I think it's kind of like a game of poker. It's like, what your competitor that you're going against is going to do. And I think that the RPO, it literally was just slowing down Jalen Hurts' time to be able to read what was happening up front with all the blitzes coming at him. Now it's like you're faking this run that has no threat. And we talked about this too. They got away from the read option. So I don't think teams are looking at the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts going, oh, man, we got to stop Jalen Hurts, the runner now. He hasn't proven that he can run the ball from the quarterback position or within this scheme, I'd say like at the whole back half of the season. So it's just not a threat. So to me, now you got Jalen Hurts catching the shotgun snap, having to then fake the handoff to DeAndre Swift and then look up and try to make a quick decision.
And with 5 people already there, basically.
Right. It's like, and I think that's why the safety kind of happened. Like, you could see him like kind of panic, stepped up. The pressure hadn't quite got to him yet. And then he stepped back a little bit. And now you're in trouble. He had a chance to throw it away, didn't throw the ball away. But I just think, Jalen Hurts is playing way too much hero ball. Too much hero ball.
And listen, you're going to start getting, Jalen Hurts is going to start getting the Dak Prescott treatment now, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Like it basically like he's not doing everything and he's not doing it all, right? Like it's not like Jalen Hurts is the reason why they lost this football game. Right. You find me like there's people out there who probably think that, and those people are crazy. I mean, and that's their opinion, but you can't put the blame on Jalen Hurts on this one. Like Jalen Hurts has done everything and anything he can to win football games, and fortunately, and people think that just because he doesn't do it right, that he gets it's excuses. It's not excuses. Yeah. This is part of football, no matter who the quarterback is. Like even Patrick Mahomes, right? And I'll give you a little bit on that in a second. But you talk just a couple other notes before I want to get to a couple of comments here in the chat. 0 for 9 on third down. That's just, you said it. I mean, that right there hurts my soul almost as much as anything that I see out there statistically, right? Like you can't win a playoff, let alone a football game. You can't win a playoff game converting to third down. Like that's and the play calling on third down, horrendous. That's easily said. But the defense, you gave up 426 yards. 426 total yards for Tampa Bay, who just scored 9 points against the Carolina Panthers the week before. You know what I'm saying? How many people
thinking the Eagles was going to go out here and win this game?
I was just going to say, how many people looked at that game and was like, oh, there's no way. I mean, they barely beat the Panthers the week before, right? So it just goes to show you how much coaching comes into play. Like, the coaching staff for Tampa Bay not only made adjustments against Philadelphia, they made adjustments by themselves from the week before to this week and completely came out with a different looking offense, and it worked. And then time of possession, that's how you beat Philadelphia. We talked about that. First downs, right? Like, not even just when you think about first downs, the team totally gets, right? You would imagine, it'd be low if you go 0 for 9 on third down, 0 for 11 on third and fourth, as you pointed out. Philadelphia Eagles had 13 total first downs in this game. You know what I'm saying? Like, Tampa Bay, 23 first downs in this game.
Almost.
So there's a lot of things that go into this matchup. I just think that the Eagles, we were hoping, based on the fact that we both picked the Eagles to win, we were hoping that they would, it would be playoffs, they'd turn it up, this and that. It just didn't happen, I
did want to see the Cowboys and the Eagles kind of at least make a push towards the championship again this year. But the Lions being out there is a good look, I think. I think the Lions are a team that's still left that can really, and any of these teams could really give a run to the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think it's likely, but I do think the Detroit Lions playing some really good football for sure.
And I did want to just touch on a couple of comments really fast because I think that they're interesting. Giant Takes says, the last time you all talked about Jalen Hurts, you both said he was on the verge of elite. Yeah. How are you going to sit there and talk about the receivers being the problem? Hurts had one good year.
Yeah, so Hurts has had, I'd say he's had one great year. Because I do think that this year was a good year. The turnovers were a little bit inflated a little bit. But when a guy scores 38 touchdowns in the regular season, I don't know how we can say that's not good.
Yeah, it's you can't. And the thing is that when we're talking about the team needing a third wide receiver, right, we're not talking about that the team needing a third wide receiver and Jalen Hurts being on the verge of elite have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah,
okay.
I think the third wide receiver would be a necessity for them to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because when you game plan against them, although it is not hard it's not easy to game plan against A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and obviously the weapons, they help Jalen Hurts be a better quarterback. That goes for any quarterback in the league. We know that. A wide receiver one is almost damn near a necessity in the NFL, at least a wide receiver one. But I think when you got two guys on the outside and an offensive scheme like this, like what Sirianni's putting out there, that doesn't move those wide receivers around. I think even when we talk about this game here in a second with the Dallas Cowboys, the way that they move CeeDee Lamb around, they'll put him on the outside, put him in the slot. It's almost like you can't stop him. Mm-hmm. And when I look at Jalen Hurts in this matchup, I'm also the kind of fan that I don't use one game to prove a narrative, right?
Yeah.
Like, look at Jalen Hurts' entire body of work. I think he's an above-average quarterback. Mm-hmm. If somebody wants to debate that, that's on them, right? I think that Jalen Hurts is an above-average quarterback. Had he have made a deep run in the playoffs, those things are what solidify and help quarterbacks become elite. You can't be an elite quarterback in this league without winning games. So to me, that's the foundation. You got to at least win games and have a high winning percentage. After that, obviously, it's going to be your plays that you make on the field. Some guys are going to do more with their legs. Some guys are going to do more with their arms. Some people are going to be a little bit more balanced. I mean, I looked at Cam Newton. I thought he was an elite quarterback during his time before the shoulder injury, right? I look at Jalen Hurts, and I think that he was knocking on the door of elite. I really do. This is obviously going to be a step back for Jalen Hurts, losing a game like this. But just look at what was happening and what was transpiring in this game. They blitzed him on every damn play, and the Philadelphia Eagles had no answer for that. The whole time, what I was saying is, during the game, the Eagles needed, just line up an I formation, put a full, even if you got to take an offensive lineman and let them know, hey, we are running this ball right at you. They should have done that. And instead, they did all this little, pity-pat shotgun type of running stuff that I think makes them a little bit more predictable and loses a lot of leverage. We all know that the Philadelphia Eagles have one of the best offensive lines in the game, but that does not show up in their RTDB game plan, which is kind of pathetic.
And it's important. You have to have that. You just have to have that, especially in the playoffs. And another quick little Hurts comment before we round this out. Bark Nasty saying, think y'all are giving Hurts a pass, but that's just my opinion. Really look into his faults and his numbers from last year and this year. Baker had a better year. Think every quarterback in the East was overhyped. So giving a Hurts a pass, I mean, that's your opinion, and like I said, everybody's allowed to have their own opinions. I'm not going to knock your opinion. I don't think I'm giving Jalen Hurts a pass because I think Jalen Hurts has proven more than enough on the field and off the field, the way that he carries himself as a quarterback, to prove that he's one of the top guys in the National Football League. And his faults, yeah, he's going to have faults. His faults are no more larger than Lamar Jackson's, than Josh Allen's, who are both elite quarterbacks, who are both in the playoffs right now.
That's a good point.
So his faults aren't like, Jimmy Garoppolo or even Sam Howell. So for me, and yeah, his numbers are different this year than last year. A lot of that has to do with the scheme. A lot of that has to do with the coaching. A lot of that has to do with the competition being a lot more difficult this year in comparison to last year. Look at Patrick Mahomes' numbers from last year to this year. Look at Josh Allen's numbers from last year to this year. It's the same thing. The
Right.
quarterback, and we talked about this a little bit last show, I think it was, the overall production of the quarterback position this year is down from the last year and maybe even the year before that. And Baker had a great year, but I mean, Baker had like a lot of quarterbacks in this league. I think you look at the quarterback position this year a lot more in comparison to streaky hitting in baseball. You'll see guys in baseball, it's a long season. You'll see guys go on insane stretches. And then you'll see guys go cold for like 20 games, go like 3 for 30 at the plate. And you see that with quarterbacks a lot this year too. Look at Jordan Love. Jordan Love started hot, had a really bad stretch, ended the season hot. Baker, very similar thing, but Baker had a great year. We're both Baker guys. We love Baker since Baker was drafted, And then as far as the last part, I think every quarterback in the East was overhyped. Overhyped is a thing that is created by fans and media, right? That's what hype is, okay? So if somebody is overhyped, that's on you as the person, because you either buy into the hype, or you either provide the hype, or you don't necessarily believe in the hype. Hype is almost a figment of imagination, right? Yeah. But for me, I think I overhyped. I don't know if I overhyped, but I over-evaluated Sam Howell and Daniel Jones, and I under-evaluated Dak Prescott going into the year. But excuse me, but I don't necessarily think that every quarterback in the NFC East was overhyped. But that's also something that's going to be perceived differently by every person that looks at the position in the division.
Yeah, I think that is a good point too. And good play and productivity is what builds hype. As the year progressed, Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott were both in the MVP conversation all the way up until the last week. So I don't know, were they really overhyped? I don't think anybody thought Dak Prescott was going to be an MVP candidate at the beginning of the year, right?
Right.
So is that really overhyped if
Yeah.
you really think about it?
Yeah.
I think maybe he overproduced actually in the regular season and might have created a false sense of what kind of quarterback he actually was. Jalen Hurts, his year is very similar to last year, except the turnovers are up. And I think teams getting tape on him. Daniel Jones, I absolutely did not overhype Daniel Jones coming into this year. I think we knew exactly what Daniel Jones was, and the contract was definitely a head scratcher for me. To see a guy like that get $40 million and dating all the way back to a year from today, where I was talking about guys like Marcus Mariota, guys like Baker Mayfield, guys like Gardner Minshew, who would bring in equal or equivalent type of value for way less money. And the Bucs, I guess they saw that in Baker Mayfield. He did have a great Monday night performance last year with the Rams, showed you he could still play football at a high level. They bring that guy in for $3 million a year, and he's giving you better productivity than a bunch of quarterbacks getting paid way more money. Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones. I can't say Dak Prescott included, because Dak Prescott's regular season was pretty phenomenal. So I think as far as hype goes, productivity builds hype. Jalen Hurts was the best player in the Super Bowl a year ago. So coming into this season, people are going to automatically think that he's one of the better quarterbacks. I did a top 10 video before the year started. I had Jalen Hurts at number 5 or number 6, I believe. And I had Lamar Jackson right ahead of him. And I had Justin Herbert right behind him and Trevor Lawrence right behind him. And I still think it's kind of in that same range. I mean, I just think that with Jalen Hurts, they got to get a real, true offensive mind behind him before it's too late. Because now you've already paid him the money. And I think that creates a bit of a hot seat for guys like Nick Sirianni.
I agree.
I saw one from Chris Peace a little while ago that I should have started. I didn't put it up there. Oh, this one right here. This is a really good saying here. He said that Awthentik mentioned the podcast saying the Eagles were running a high school offense. Kind of makes what Julian Love said last February about Sirianni hit a little different. And I've talked about that. Me and Mace was talking about this on Twitter today. Julian Love was just the wrong messenger. It came across a bit goofy to me because the week before he came out and said these comments, you out there missing interceptions and whiffing on picks, Devonta Smith making catches on you, and then you go up there and you say that about Nick Sirianni. But I do think the message has some validity to it. So shout out to Chris Peace for bringing that up. I thought that was a really good point.
And one more really fast. Eddie Nash wants to know about Baker Mayfield. Why do we think Baker would have done this on any other team? The Bucs had 2 1,000-yard receivers, a running back with 1,500 scrimmage yards. Evans led the league in touchdowns. Okay, but my point is this, is that in order for a wide receiver to have 1,000 yards, in order for a wide receiver to lead the league in touchdowns, he has to have a quarterback that can be able to make that happen for them. Okay? You know, like, it's like saying, like, okay, well, Terry McLaurin's a 1,000-yard receiver, right? But Sam Howell also threw 18 interceptions. 20. Thanks for being okay. 21 maybe. 21 maybe. but my thing is
it was 21. It was 21 touchdowns, 21 picks. Yeah.
At least they didn't finish with more receptions than touchdowns. and yes, Mike Evans is the most consistent wide receiver in the National Football League. He's criminally underrated and undervalued when it comes to wide receivers. Sure. We all know that, right? But the things that Baker does may not show up on the stat sheet. Baker Mayfield is an absolute dog when it comes between the lines. But when that whistle blows in the beginning of the game till the whistle blows at the end of the game, Baker Mayfield is out there throwing his body around. That dude is a football player. He is what Tim Tebow was in college. That's what Baker Mayfield is every time he steps out on the field. Baker Mayfield makes things happen. Yes, Mike Evans is great.
He's a gamer for sure. To tag on to what you're saying here, though, and make this make a little bit more sense, too, is, okay, he has a 1,000-yard wide receiver 2 on that roster for real, okay? When you pay a quarterback as low as they paid him, that gives you the opportunity to be able to go out there and pay a wide receiver. Like, I don't know if you saw in the offseason when I was talking about trying to bring in DeAndre Hopkins, who had 1,000 yards on the Tennessee Titans with Will Levis, Ryan Tannehill, and Malik Willis playing quarterback. It allows you to have more flexibility to bring in free agents if indeed you want to make that run. Now, people's counter argument to that is, well, you know, Daniel Jones and the New York Giants won, 9 games in the regular season and they had a playoff win. How are you going to part ways with him? It would have been a difficult decision, and I think the GMs cannot be out here trying to make fans happy. Don't forget that the Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2000 against the New York Giants, I might add. They had Trent Dilfer at quarterback. You think they brought him back? No. He was in free agency the year after that. I'm sure that was a difficult decision as well. But at the same time, when you're talking about a guy making $40 million a year and another guy making $3 million a year, come on now. I'm not a mathematician, but that does free up $37 million for that year. It's that simple. They gave Daniel Jones $92 million guaranteed. So that money is done. When you pay a guy a bridge quarterback that's just $3 million, the productivity, in reference to who that quarterback is. I could understand if you thought Daniel Jones had elite characteristics and could be an elite quarterback in this league, which some people thought that. And that's why I always say, just stand 10 toes on that. Just stand on business and say, I had faith that Daniel Jones was going to be one of the best quarterbacks in this league. Then I think the argument makes a little bit more sense. But you can't act like you can put any quarterback in the Bucs system and that they're automatically going to thrive and just be a good quarterback. We saw Jameis Winston over there with those same 2 weapons, and he struggled.
Yeah.
You saw this kid
Tom Brady last year.
Tom Brady struggled last year, had a worse year than Baker Mayfield did. I know he was getting older, but yeah, I do think if you brought in Baker, you could have freed up some resources to be able to bring in other talent for teams like the New York Giants or any other team that needed to bring in a bridge quarterback and try to free up some money to be able to build upon the roster. But I think the Giants, it was a difficult decision, and they thought they were a better team than they actually were entering this season.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, but some good comments from y'all. Let me see. I just want to see Eddie did respond to this when he said, that was an awful contract for Daniel Jones. I just hate the revisionist history. Nobody saw this for the Bucs except Bucs fans. I think even Bucs fans really didn't see this. And I can't sit up here and tell you that I thought the Bucs were going to win that division and come out here and beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round of playoffs. I did not see that coming. But anybody who didn't think that Baker Mayfield was a capable quarterback that was going to go over there and be able to win games, I think I agree with you on that just the same exact way. I believe it's Kyle Trask that's the backup quarterback over there, the youngin who I believe is in his second year. Nope, he could not have came in here and done what Baker Mayfield did this season. I will confidently say that. But I do think Eddie Nash has a very rational perspective on this. It was very difficult, for the New York Giants to not go out there and sign Daniel Jones, but I think that's why these GMs get paid the big bucks. I'm not up here telling you I'm always right or nothing like that. But I saw it with my own two eyes. You cannot give a quarterback $40 million a year that only threw for 15 passing touchdowns. I just think that was an egregious mistake by the Giants. And you could quite possibly say that the Philadelphia Eagles paying Jalen Hurts over $200 million, it could be a mistake in the long run here because he has the weapons over there. But the thing is, the difference between Jalen Hurts is I didn't see a quarterback that was absolutely struggling off the merit of his play and his skill set in this game. I saw an offensive philosophy that was completely dominated by the opposite coaching staff. So I think you gotta put some respect on Todd Bowles' name and the rest of that coaching staff over there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Absolutely. Big shout outs to our guy, your guy, everybody's guy, my man Keith over at Vintage Sport Flips for the $19.99 super chat. Says, thanks for a great year of content, Awthentik and The Beard. Jalen was severely hampered by an overmatched and under-creative OC. Won't be surprised if he has a knee cleanup this offseason, too. That's a great point, too, because they didn't really talk about Jalen Hurts like with his legs much towards the back end of the season.
The dynamic type of running was not there this year. It was not. And I heard somebody else say this on national media. I think it was like Colin Cowherd or one of them were saying this, like they wouldn't be surprised if he has some knee injury going on. I'm not here to make any excuses for Jalen Hurts. He came into that game with a dislocated finger and all that. I'm not going to mention it like that. It's all good. He went out there and I thought he played the best type of game he could. He gave his wide receivers some opportunities and some one-on-one matchups. No A.J. Brown out there. They did not adjust their game plan to not having their number one weapon out there. And in return, it hurt them. I think that they still had a chance to win this game, just down by one score at the half. And you saw Todd Bowles and the rest of that coaching staff for the Bucs go out there in the second half. I would say they added on to the mountain that was aiding them to a lead in the first half, and in the second half came out and played even better football, better defensive performance in the second half than it was in the first half.
Big shout out to Vintage Sport Flips. If you guys aren't following him on YouTube, make sure you guys give him a follow. He sponsored a ton of giveaways for Awthentik and The Beard over the past couple of years, so definitely go show him some love. He's got a live show that he does every Wednesday. They draft their top sports related things. I think last week they I forget what they drafted last week, but they did best athlete nicknames. They've done best football moments, stuff like that, and then they show you a bunch of cool stuff sports related that they're selling. So make sure you guys go show them some love. They will be live tomorrow night.
Yeah, major shout out to Vintage Sports Flips. Been holding us down over here. Sean Jackson said, what's up, Awthentik and The Beard? Authentic, is your brother still grieving after his Cowboys collapsed again? So my bro has pretty much given up on the Cowboys for real. He hasn't been watching them as much. Every now and again, he'll catch a game, but I remember a conversation with him about 7 weeks ago. He was like, man, I'm just waiting for us to get to the playoffs and fumble the bag. And that's exactly what the Dallas Cowboys did. So I guess we can put a button up on this game here one time, and let's get right to it, man. Let's talk about it, man. The Packers traveled to Jerry World to take on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. All right, I think this one was even a bigger surprise than the Bucs taking care of the Philadelphia Eagles. The Cowboys' opening line on this game, they were favored by 7.5. They end up losing to myself at the quarterback position. Football on Sundays, YouTube on Mondays. Y'all know what it is. 48-32. The Packers have now gotten just as many wins at AT&T Stadium as the Cowboys. The Cowboys opened up that stadium in 2009. They have 3 playoff victories since, and the Packers have 3 playoff victories against the Dallas Cowboys in that time span. The Packers have beaten the Cowboys now 5 straight times, and they've won 10 of the past 11 games. Cowboys' winning streak of 16 games at home comes to a horrific end. I mean, I knew a couple of homies that were actually at this game, and I'm definitely feeling for them because This is the kind of playoff performance that if you're in the crowd, you're sick to your stomach. You want to go vomit. And if you drink alcohol, you got one of two choices. You can try to remain calm and remain sober, or you could just hit the bar and completely get shit-faced. And I'm sure a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans were out there definitely getting their drink on in this one, because before you could blink, this game was 27-0. Now, the first team to win 12 games in 3 consecutive seasons and not make it to a championship game. The Beard talked about this with Mike McCarthy possibly being on a hot seat. I'm going to get to that a little bit after I get your assessment on this one here. Mike McCarthy had a chance to become the first coach to win a playoff game against the team he led to the Super Bowl title. Nope, didn't get to that one. The Packers, who have the youngest roster in the NFL, became the first number 7 seed to knock off a number 2 seed since the NFL began this playoff format in 2020. The Packers are now on a 4-game winning streak, have scored over 30 points in 4 of their last 5 games. The Packers' 48 points tied the franchise record for a postseason game. It also was the most points the Cowboys have allowed in a playoff game in the history of their existence. The Cowboys got down 27-0, 27-7 at the half. And some of these numbers are just so interesting. And I know the Beard doesn't believe in garbage time. So, you know, I'll say that, you know, Dak Prescott and his Cowboys offense got some points late in the game and got some yardage late in this game.
I will give you this one because I was looking at the stats and I was like, wait, none of this makes any sense.
You know how when you look at the box score, you be like, do I got the date right? Like, am I looking at like an old matchup or something? Because this was crazy. Cowboys were 10 of 16 on third down. They won the time of possession in this game. They had more total yards than Green Bay. They were 4-5 in the red zone.
Yep.
Now, I came into this matchup, you know, very high on Dak Prescott. Definitely wrong on that in this game in particular. But even Dak's numbers were a little bit skewed. He came into this game balling out for, you know, regular season purposes, right? 11 games with multiple passing touchdowns. Led the NFL with 36 touchdowns through the air this season. His 2 interceptions were absolutely costly in this game in a terrible time when their defense was falling apart. When you look at these statistics, it's like, how in
it looks like 2 games combined.
It's 2 games combined. He was 41 of 60. I don't know the last time I could say a quarterback threw the ball 60 times in a game. 403 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And when you look at some of the numbers from the wide receiver core, it makes you just think, like, what was going on here? Michael Gallup, 6 receptions for 103. Jake Ferguson, 10 receptions for 93. CeeDee Lamb was blanketed in the first half in this one. Lamb came into this game, 7 games with at least 10 receptions. He had eight. This would have been his 8th game with 10 receptions. Just short, had 9 receptions for 110 yards. A lot of people were saying that CeeDee Lamb was scared in this game and he didn't show up in this one. And I thought, you know, 9 receptions, 110.
Yeah,
you could see him, he wanted the ball.
Statement.
And there was like a little bit of a Jair Alexander clip going around where he pushed CeeDee Lamb and CeeDee Lamb didn't react, right? Now, them interceptions were definitely costly. But the Cowboys gave up 13 yards per pass in this game. They didn't sack Jordan Love 1 time, 0 forced turnovers. Just 5 passes for Jordan Love that didn't hit the ground. He was 16 of 21. It's extremely efficient. 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. The Cowboys came into this game allowing 18.5 points per game, just 187.4 passing yards per game. And the Packers put up double that point. They put up 48 points in this one, 272 yards passing. The Packers came into this one averaging just 22.5 points per game. They definitely doubled that against the 5th-ranked defense in the NFL. Now, I kind of want to hear what...
didn't even have a catch, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, in this game.
Who didn't have a catch?
Jaden Reed, their leading receiver on the season, didn't even have a catch in this game.
Yeah, and they've been dealing with their own injuries. But before I go on, I got a lot to talk about in this game. I want to know what you thought, how things fell apart. I mean, I guess this was the team that you thought was going to win eight victories this year entering the year, that came out here and showed up against the Packers in this one. But what were your thoughts on it? What's
crazy is this isn't even the team that I thought would. The team that I thought was going to win 8 games, it isn't a team that exists, okay? Because this is tough for me, right? Because this might sound crazy. I kind of wanted Dak to win, right?
Yeah, I kind of did too. To get the, it reminds me of Steve Young a little bit. Like get that off your back a little bit. Like just get a couple of playoff wins, get to the championship. You can falter and lose in the championship, no problem. But I wanted to see him win a game or two.
Because I don't want to fault. I don't want to like go backwards to having to talk bad about Dak after just talking good about him for so long. But like now it's like, is Dak and Kirk Cousins they're just those type of quarterback. It's like the Dak and Kirk are just in this bubble by themselves, and then there's the elite, and then there's this everybody else, right? Like I just want Dak and Kirk to like give them like some pins to just like pop the bubble and get out of this bubble that they're in. It's driving me insane. Okay, so I mean, listen, it was just like the perfect storm is what it was, really. Because defensively, there's nobody on the planet Earth that thought that this game was going to go the way that it went defensively for the Dallas Cowboys. So just, I don't care what you say. Like, you could be a Packers fan and say that, but you in your heart didn't think that. No way. Not a chance. I mean, and then it's like, yeah, Dak threw the 2 interceptions. Okay, both interceptions led to 14 points. But damn, they still scored 34 points on offense.
Yep, they did.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like the numbers. Listen, Green Bay had 415 yards of total offense. We ain't even talk about Aaron Jones yet.
Yep.
My boy Aaron Jones he was back home. He had tickets for the whole family. He had his boys in the stands. My man went absolutely bananas. 21 carries, 118 yards. Not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. Okay? Absolutely crazy. Green Bay ran the ball 33 times. Okay? We could talk about Jordan Love. Jordan Love had an amazing game, but we all know where it starts with the Dallas Cowboys defensive woes.
This is true.
It starts with the running game. The reason why Jordan Love was so damn efficient, not to take anything away from Jordan Love, because as you and I mentioned when we started this show, Jordan Love made some hella plays on third down, made hella plays against the blitz, made hella plays under pressure. You look at his statistics under pressure, it's mind-blowing, okay? It's elite level, his numbers under pressure in this game. But if you run the ball 33 times, it opens up the passing game, okay? Dallas ran the ball okay, but a lot of it was just weird. It wasn't like consistent. You threw the ball. The Dallas Cowboys ran damn near 100 plays. Damn near 100 plays. They ran the ball only 25 times, which, is not bad for a team, but 123 yards on the ground. But defensively, they couldn't stop Green Bay in the red zone. 4 for 4 in the red zone. You get 1 or 2 of those stops. It's like this is why I talk about the complete game. Green Bay's team as a whole played an absolutely perfect team game. Defensively, they first of those 2 turnovers. They had the touchdown on the interception. Offensively, they ran the ball. They passed the ball. There was no turnovers. It was a complete perfect game by the team from top to bottom. Absolutely amazing. Green Bay only punted the ball 2 times. Dallas only had 7 points in the first half. Dak Prescott didn't even have positive passing yards in the first quarter. He had negative passing yards in the first quarter.
Absolutely awful for the Dallas Cowboys.
So it's like
you
the
knew
start.
They were in trouble early on. You knew it.
The start was it all started and it just went downhill, and like they clawed back in. I give them a little bit of respect because they fought, but I mean, Dak's going to be the scapegoat here, right? Because of the 2 interceptions. Dak can't win in the playoffs, that whole thing. But I think you have to put this loss on the Dallas Cowboys defense. The Dallas Cowboys defense won them a lot of games this year, but Dak Prescott, was the man this year. But that defense, good God Almighty,
they were terrible.
They got it was one of the worst showings. I can't like you said, when you open it up, I was laughing. Yeah, but it's so true. Like as a Dallas Cowboy fan, watching the way that game started, like you
got to be getting sick to your stomach. That it's one of those games, man. I'm telling you, where you're like, you get down 14, you're like, all right, man, if we could score, we're gonna get back in this game. It get pushed to like 21, and then you get to 27. It's like, oh, what is going? You know how this is the kind of shit you plan for all week too. You might be having a little festive, little party at your crib. You got the grill popping off. This going to be the year. And this won't be the game that'll challenge us. That's what a lot of Cowboys fans were probably thinking. You go, you get your drinks ready, and then by the end of the first quarter, you like, oh my God.
The chicken wings probably ain't even make it off the grill into the bowl, into the living room yet.
And you still got to host the party. Like, bro, it's bad. It's really bad. And I think, the pressure that they, I won't even call it the pressure. I'll call it the responsibility that LaFleur put on the shoulders of yours truly, Jordan Love. He went out there and he handled business, man. We talked about him coming into this game. He was second in the NFL with 32 passing touchdowns. Over his last 9 games, 21 touchdowns, 1 interception. I'm balling out here. And during that stretch, I'm 7-2. Big shout out to my guy one time, yo. Shout out my guy Mike C one time. Mike C been on this Jordan Love vibe, just like you've been on this vibe. And I told him during October, I was like, man, I don't know, bro. You see things getting a little dicey. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go out here and handle business on Sundays. But my God, the way that Jordan Love has finished this season, and I think a lot of it has to do with the coaching adjustments from Matt LaFleur mid-season. We always talk about this. You got quarter-to-quarter adjustments. You got game-to-game adjustments, half-to-half adjustments. But a team that can go out here and adjust during the season, when the first 8 games aren't going quite your way. The first 2 weeks of the year for Jordan Love, he was balling out. I think he had 3 touchdowns in each of those games. And then things just start to go left. And Matt LaFleur was looked at as like, okay, maybe this guy was, a beneficiary of Aaron Rodgers, right? And he goes out there and he makes the adjustments. And, in this last stretch, Jordan Love being 7-2. So big shout out my guy, Mike C. Me and him, we talk a lot about football, man, like in a group chat and outside of that group chat a lot. And he's been extremely high on Jordan Love. Also, Josh Allen as well. He's been extremely high on Josh Allen. But the Cowboys defense had no answers and no adjustments. Blown coverages all night. It'd be one thing if you seeing guys like Romeo Doubs get open down the field and you got a defender on his hip. These dudes was just open with no one in the screen. Like,
the tight end, the wide receivers, everybody.
You like, no, it's no one even in the screen when they're making a catch. And this was Dobbs' first 100-yard game of his career. 6 receptions for 151 yards and a touchdown. And Jordan Love just making throws with pressure in his face all night, buying time. They couldn't stop the run. You talked about that, man. And I just think, like, on the flip side, man, Joe Barry put together a hell of a game plan to stop the Dallas Cowboys. And, I was going to bring up this video during this segment, but I'm not even going to bring up the video, to be honest. Tiki Barber today was on WFAN, right? And just go check out that clip on Twitter. I've retweeted it, right? And he said pretty much, Dak Prescott, we knew what kind of quarterback he was. And when it comes to the big moments, Dak Prescott's going to fold. And that's why I said, I'll take Daniel Jones 100 times out of 100 times over Dak Prescott. The reason why Dak Prescott is throwing these interceptions is because he tends to, look at CeeDee Lamb too much and hope that CeeDee Lamb bails him out of these situations pretty much. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit. But then he went and said this, and this is the part that I was like, man, you're not being honest here. Now I just damn near want to show the clip, but because I'm talking about it so much. But he was like very candidly laughing about it, right? And he said, I went back and I looked at every interception from Dak Prescott last year. And if you look at the interceptions, he's targeting CeeDee Lamb on 90% of the interceptions that he threw last year of the 15. And me and you, we look at every game in the NFC East, sometimes twice, every damn week. So, this is no shade towards Tiki Barber, right? But if you're going to go out here on a major platform like that, I don't even come out here on our platform and try to tell you lies about statistics and nuggets. So I knew that CeeDee Lamb was not the most targeted with the interceptions, but I was like, let me just go back and double check, and cross-reference the work. It's not even near 90%. It's not even close. You got 2 other wide receivers on the Dallas Cowboys in 2022 that were targeted more than CeeDee Lamb on Dak Prescott's interceptions. Noah Brown was targeted on 4 of the interceptions. Dalton Schultz was targeted on 5 of the interceptions. CeeDee Lamb was targeted on 3 of them. T.Y., Michael Gallup, and Peyton Hendershot were all targeted on 1 of those interceptions. 3 of the interceptions from Dak Prescott last year tipped off of a wide receiver's mitts and went in the hands of the defense. 3 of them were also pick sixes on the year. So I'm just like, I understand you high on Daniel Jones, but he was making this comparison to try to pretty much say that that's why I'll take Daniel Jones over Dak Prescott, because in the big moments, Dak Prescott's going to fail and falter underneath the lights.
Well, at least
Dog,
he
we're
gets
talking
to the big
about
moments.
Daniel Jones, bro. Daniel Jones is 1 of 11 on primetime. Like, dog, people, listen, I will die on a take. Michael Knight came into my DMs and he was like, I told you, Dak Prescott, or I won't die on a take. Michael Knight told me, he's like, I told you, Dak Prescott, he's not going to make the Super Bowl. I just got to eat that. Look, I thought the Dallas Cowboys were going to make it to the Super Bowl. When the moment was huge, they failed. On all three phases, they failed. But I just think, like, for a guy like Tiki Barber to, like, just eat your crow on the take.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
We're not taking Daniel Jones over Dak Prescott.
Nobody
We're
is
not
in this
doing
world,
it, bro. And look, Dak Prescott had a horrible game. And look, when the moment was there for him, his team was falling behind. Dak Prescott could not do what a guy like C.J. Stroud did and put his team on his shoulders and go out there and win the game. And I do think that Dak Prescott, look, Cam Newton was right. Dak Prescott's a game manager. That's what he is. And you need pieces around a game manager for him to win. We always talk about this. There are two types of quarterbacks in the NFL. One of those types needs a running game. One of those types don't need the running game. More quarterbacks are going to fall into that ballpark of the guys who need a running game. Dak Prescott's one of those guys that needs a running game.
Yeah, it's just tough. It's tough because it's not like it was yes, the 2 interceptions were bad, right? And I know the 3 touchdowns came at, towards when they were already losing.
Later in
right?
the game. Not during garbage time, right?
Yeah. I will allow garbage time before I allow generational talent as a phrase in football.
I got you. A little hierarchy of the stuff that the Beard does not deal with.
But if the defense makes 2 stops,
yeah,
you can kind of recover from that, right?
You might have a game.
But so it's like, I'm not going to sit here and it's too easy for Washington fans, for Giants fans, Eagles fans, just overall Dallas haters. It's too easy to sit here and blame this game on Dak Prescott and say Dak Prescott failed under the lights. It's not like Dak Prescott was 9 of 21 for 125 yards and 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think you gotta put some blame on him. Obviously.
Yeah, you have to, because he's the quarterback.
If I go with the hierarchy of blame, I gotta start with the defense, because guys like Michael Parsons up front, and you don't even get a sack on Jordan Love, that's crazy. The way that they were running open down the field was crazy. To allow that many yards, to allow 13 yards per passing play, I've never seen no shit like that.
And you know what's crazy, too, is like we talk about some of the great head coaches. And, yeah, I wouldn't take him as my head coach right now, but that doesn't mean he's not one of the best head coaches in the world of all time. Bill Belichick, right?
Yeah.
What was one of the things that you always talk about when we're looking at quarterbacks during the season and we're talking about quarterbacks in the parlay, right? Bill Belichick, what he does against...
when he goes up against the younger quarterbacks, yeah, he dominates.
Right? You're talking about Jordan Love making his first start in the playoffs, right? Like, this is his first big game on the road against a team that has not lost at home in 16 straight games.
Yeah.
And not only does he not get sacked, not only does he not throw an interception, my man just is feasting. See, he only had to throw the ball 21 times.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And a lot of that was obviously because of the run game. They ran the ball down their throats. But it's just, if you want to win a Super Bowl, right, there's certain things you got to do. And it's not just on the players, it's on the coaches. And Mike McCarthy is going to get a lot of, flack here. And I know I made this statement, it feels like an eternity ago. It might have been like 6-7 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that I necessarily agreed with the decision to do that, but it just, and here we are. We're talking at the end of the year. We're talking about Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni possibly losing their jobs here. And it's kind of crazy, and like, I don't know if I would agree with it, right? And here it is. Shout out to the graphics department. Who should be fired first? Mike McCarthy or Nick Sirianni? I don't think either one of them should be fired. I don't. I'm sorry. I might be in the wrong here. I don't. Do I think if I had to choose, I don't know, man. Nick Sirianni went to the Super Bowl last year.
He did. But I do think we got to think about how they got there. Looking at this offense, not addressing the issues. I think if you're a head coach in the NFL and you don't address your glaring issues, you're a fool.
You're a liability. It's malpractice.
When you're winning, because when you're winning, all teams are doing is studying your tape, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could say it about the Dallas Cowboys in this matchup. I don't know if you saw on the first interception, they had that safety drop down into the box. They disguised it like they were playing a man-to-man against Dak in that offense. And they had 2 routes go to the inside. I think they ran 2 slants to the inside with, I believe it was CeeDee Lamb on the outside. I forget who was on the inside.
I think it was Cooks, maybe.
Yeah, I think it might have been Cooks. I can't remember verbatim, right? But the guy who was covering the inside slant, he baited Dak Prescott. Dak thought he had the slant. The guy who was playing the inside slant stepped off his man, let him go, and jumped that lane and intercepted that ball. These were the kind of things that put Dak in a position last season, right, to throw a lot of interceptions. One, it was him and his wide receivers not being on the same page, and a lot of times defenses disguising what they were doing against Dak, and when they weren't on the same page, Dak throwing to a spot and the defense getting to that spot before his wide receiver would get there. So this was, to me, a big mistake on the coaching department on both of these teams because they're looking at what worked, and I talked about this all year. Like, no one was running that quick slant like Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And shout out to the Green Bay Packers for adjusting in this game and giving Dak some different looks. And then I think once Dak threw the first interception, now you got to convince in your mind, don't panic, don't play tight, right? Go out here and try to play loose. And he tried to do that, and it led to another interception. And now at that point, once you throw 2 interceptions, ain't no way you're not playing tight. You're coming out there completely tight. You're worried about the interceptions now. You see the frustrations on the sidelines with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and other players on that offense. And now your quarterback is a shell of himself because he can't go out there and play the type of football that you know he's capable of doing. With Nick Sirianni, I think it's more egregious. You got 6-7 weeks. With the Dallas Cowboys, they came into the playoffs hot. Mm-hmm. So, to not adjust, I think is less egregious on their part.
Agreed.
With Nick Sirianni, you lost 5 out of 6 games coming into the playoffs, and you saw how teams dominated you all the way down to the last game that you lost to the lowly New York Giants, where all Wink Martindale was doing was throwing the kitchen sink at you, and you had no game plan. Literally no hots. No way for Jalen Hurts to be able to get the ball out of his hands fast when the blitz was coming. So in return, Jalen Hurts got 2 options. Either keep running backwards or try to throw up that one-on-one fade route outside.
It's tough, but I think the points that you bring up have made me, made my decision a little bit easier because you think about it, it's not even just the last 1-5 in the last 6 games or whatnot, right? Like, it's the way that we questioned them early in the season, but we were all kind of just like, oh, you got to win the close ones. And, they're winning games and they're not even playing at their best. And
the problem was their offense wasn't the issue. You look at the stretch of games that A.J. Brown had where he had 6 games over 125 yards. It was more the defense. We're looking at that defense like, damn, bro, like that secondary's getting gashed.
Torched.
And then the offense kind of caught up to them towards the end of the year.
And what's crazy is we said they're winning games and they're not even playing their best. Mm-hmm. They never got to that point.
They never got there.
Of playing their best. And I think that if we're talking about it, you look at a guy like Ron Rivera, right? I mean, he was a good coach in the sense of, the man and this and that, right? And Nick Sirianni, you love him when you're winning and he's doing all his crazy antics, right? But are we going to let Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, you're already losing Jason Kelce now. Are we going to let these guys?
Has he already said he's going to retire?
Yeah, he's retiring.
He's going to retire.
Yeah. So you have these guys on these contracts. Are we going to just let Sirianni run amok for another year, or
ton of free agents on that roster this
year?
Oh
my God, I saw the list. Drastic. Mm-hmm. And so both of these teams, that's the thing is both of these teams are in a weird position where it was it wasn't necessarily it has to happen this year, but it would have been really good if it happened this year because moving forward, you're going to have a lot of things to deal with, contractual, free agency, draft, and just, a whole bunch of different things. And neither one of these guys are going to get an easy schedule next year.
So we did tiptoe around this a little bit though. For me, if I got to choose between these 2 coaches, I'm going Nick Sirianni.
I'm going Nick Sirianni also. I think I agree.
I kind of agree with you that maybe neither one of them deserves to be fired just yet because they're winning regular season games. But I just think the collapse from the Philadelphia Eagles was
epic.
absolutely pathetic. Yeah, it was very epic, man. And I saw this comment here that I did want to just highlight here from Sarah. There's, if I was on my game, I would know how to pronounce that last name.
I think X's are pronounced with a Z, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's Zong.
Zong. Looks like Steichen and Gannon were the reason Eagles were successful last year. I think it's part of it, but I also think that their playmakers were just making the explosive plays as well, especially on the offensive side of the ball, right? When you look at Shane Steichen and the way they ran that offense last year, it's almost they're running the same offense verbatim this year with just a little bit less pre-snap motion. They're relying on guys to win one-on-one matchups, and defenses now have got the tape. They're scheming, to stop that. And when you don't have A.J. Brown, last year they didn't have to deal with A.J. Brown not being there for their most important games. I think that was one of the biggest reasons why they lost this game. A.J. Brown goes up and he makes some plays one-on-one that not many wide receivers can make in this league.
I absolutely agree with you. Big shout out to Kai 001 with a $4.99 super chat. Says Dan Quinn cannot handle coaches that come from that Shanahan scheme.
That's a good point.
Bars.
I know Kai was sick. I know he was sick during this game.
Do not come to Washington for your interview, Dan Quinn. I would appreciate that. If you want to just cancel that now. There was reports leading up into that to the Dallas game that he was the leader in the clubhouse for the head coaching position for the Washington Commanders.
Dan Quinn.
You
remember I said either last week or 2 weeks ago, I was like, I like Dan Quinn as a
DC.
As a DC, yeah, but not as a head coach. He's definitely struggled as a head coach.
Definitely.
Speaking of your Commanders real quick, and I forgot to bring this up. Jay Gruden, and it's perfect timing right now, actually. It's just perfect timing to bring this up because that comment was just dead on. So Jay Gruden commented on what he saw from the Philadelphia Eagles offense, and I did get the tweet here. Let me kind of make this a little bit larger so I can really see it. Jay Gruden said, if I ever put a quarterback through what Philly is putting Jalen Hurts through, I apologize. Pick up the blitz with an exclamation mark. Now, Brian Mitchell, shout out to Brian Mitchell. I met him at an event last year. Super cool dude. He said, are you serious? Dude, please just effing disappear. Jay Gruden said, you are a punt returner. Be quiet. I was like, yo, Jay Gruden wants to smoke. So Brian Mitchell then returned and said, I was way better at all my jobs than you were at any of yours. You are a joke. And Jay Gruden says, you have criticized every coach that has ever coached in D.C. Why don't you coach? Punt return team would be sick. They were going at it.
RG3
today. Jumped
in that whole mix too.
Did he?
Oh, yeah. It was RG3, Brian Mitchell, and Jay Gruden. It went on. They all must have been drinking because it was some – they were definitely all drinking. Jay Gruden, when he says you are a punt returner, it says I are a punt returner.
That was not a typo there. His thumb was just drunk right there.
They were definitely all drinking. But listen, and there's obviously history between all three of these guys, and they all make, reasonable points to an extent. But I think – obviously, let's be honest, because Brian Mitchell and RG3 came at Jay Gruden. All Jay Gruden was doing was making
he did just make a regular blanket statement.
And then everybody came for his neck. You know what I'm saying? Listen, I'm not the biggest I love Jay Gruden as a guy. Like, a guy you listen to like on the radio or, he's a guy. I don't want him anywhere near my football team, but he is an interesting listen to, and he does know football, believe it or not. But I think what he said makes sense. And I think a lot of people will probably say that, it's on Jalen Hurts to recognize it and to change the protection. But from our standpoint, I mean, Jesus, they're not running hot. They don't have hot routes. They don't have motion. What makes you think they have anything to do to pick up the blitz?
It's what Jalen Hurts is being coached to do when he sees, fronts that out leverage the amount of blockers that he has on his offensive side of the ball. And you could tell every time they blitzed, they never did max protection, which was sketchy in its own right. At least when you looked at Brian Dable and the New York Giants when they were dealing with pressure on Daniel Jones and all the other quarterbacks, if you look back to even last season, there were times they were like, you know what, bro? Like, let's bring in Mark Lewinsky as the tight end. We're going to go 12 personnel, put 2 tight ends out here, and we're going to just try to max protect, run 2 guys out in a route concept here and see if we can at least get our quarterback some time to get the ball down the field. Yeah. In this game with the Philadelphia Eagles, it was literally every damn passing play. He had a guy that was unblitzed, sometimes 2 guys that were unblitzed coming down in the A-gaps. It's a nightmare for a quarterback. So, if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you got to hope that they can find a way to correct this. I don't think a lot of this was on Jalen Hurts. The protection that they have coached him up to, his pre-snap reads and whatnot, they don't have any. They don't have any outs for their offense to be able to throw the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands quickly outside of just running a go route and hoping it's one-on-one.
Yeah, it was a disaster, and I feel like everybody was kind of just like, oh, it's the Eagles. They'll be okay. They went to the Super Bowl last year, and just never got fixed, never got addressed.
Yeah, and I also think a lot of people look at it like, the quarterback is struggling a little bit, right? And they just pin it on the quarterback. Like, whenever I come to an assessment on a quarterback either struggling or thriving, I make sure to go look at the tape and seeing what's happening up front.
Yeah, dude, let's do the homework, ladies and gentlemen, okay?
Do the homework.
Do the homework. Big shout out to Talking Echo. He's done his homework for the $4.99 super chat. Says a bit off topic. Shanahan tree be making some good coaches. Shout out to LaFleur. Commanders take notice with Bobby. He's definitely on the radar.
If they let him go.
It's going to be interesting.
He's doing a great job over there with the Houston Texans. Shout out to Talking Eco one time.
You know who else besides Talking Eco? I always say Echo. Talking Echo.
I could be wrong. It could be Echo. I would think it's Eco, but it could be
it's
Echo.
Eco too.
I'm going to guess this guy has an incredible set of abs and some, it looks like he's going to be in the weight room possibly.
Yeah, like he looks like a bodyguard in John Wick. Two-toe! The $4.99 super chat says massive salutes and respects to Awthentik and The Beard, numero uno. From strong side to left side, Roadmaps Maestro, Gold Nugget database full of facts.
Facts only.
And Spike's busy saying,
Spike don't care.
Fist pump Italy.
He didn't even have to say it. I like that.
No, I didn't. You said it for me.
So the poll, I ran the poll with the chat one time. Where do you think they went with this one on the Mike Sirianni or Nick Sirianni or Mike McCarthy being fired first? I did it too.
I'm gonna say that there's more Cowboys fans in the chat, so I'm gonna say more people said Mike McCarthy than Nick Sirianni.
Spot on. We have 59% say Mike McCarthy should be fired first. I just got to look at the way that Mike McCarthy came into this game. He did a better job coaching in this one, and I wouldn't put a lot of this on him, man. Dan Quinn went out there and kind of failed. First quarter, I saw some people talking about this in the chat too. Kind of was, not putting the ball in Dak's hands to really be able to, go out there and try to get this offense in the end zone. But then the panic kind of settled in. When you get down by a couple of scores that fast, man, that's an OC and a head coach's nightmare, straight up.
Like, this is the thing, too. It's like, it's tough when it's like your defense played great all year long, right? Your quarterback played great all year long. One game, it just kind of didn't go. And the matchup was a bad matchup for them, and they lost. It's tough to put the blame on anybody to the point where people are losing their jobs.
Yeah. You're right about that, because it's like if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not firing Dan Quinn, right?
No,
definitely not firing Dan Quinn.
No, I mean, he's had a great job with him.
Yeah, it's been unfortunate. One last topic before we get up out of here, man, and send the family home on this one. I want to talk about Dak Prescott and his contract extension. Would it be a mistake for the Cowboys to give Dak Prescott another contract extension?
How many years does he have left in his current deal?
I think he's got 2 years left on the deal. I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah, it would be a mistake.
You think it'd be a mistake?
If it's 2 years.
Yeah, because what they were trying to do, from what I thought, was get his deal done before,
Didn't
the
he
contract
just sign
expired.
a deal 2 years ago?
Yeah, he signed a 4-year deal. Let me see. Yeah, so this deal runs until 2026.
Yeah,
Their potential out was 2024 on that contract. So let me take a look at this dead cap hit. If you cut him in 2024, the dead cap hit is $61 million. If you cut him in 2025, the dead cap hit is $36 million. So you know what? I think this contract actually goes until 2025, and 2026 they just owed him some more money on the contract. So it goes till 2025. So he's got 2 years left on it.
Yeah, no, there's no need to even think about. Maybe if you do a contract extension with a real, it would have to be like a really wordy contract, like where you give him a contract extension, but it's not really an extension. It's like a restructure with a little bit more wiggle room.
That's pretty much what the extension was they were talking about, because if he stays on the roster, the dead cap hit is over $36 million in both the next 2 years. So you would pretty much be committing to him being your quarterback on that contract for the remainder of that contract for 2 more years. Where if you did extend him, at least you could possibly create a deal, maybe like the Daniel Jones deal from this point on out, where you give him 2 years, but then you give yourself some kind of an out on the back end.
Yeah, because listen, CeeDee Lamb is up for a deal. I think this is his last year in his contract, right?
Yep.
Because everybody else in that 2020 draft has gotten their deals. And I know Tua, they're talking about extending Tua. So I think CeeDee Lamb's contract is due for a contract. They're going to need to look. They're going to let Tony Pollard walk probably.
That's so wild how all that went down with Tony Pollard. He was such a great back in 2022, and then now they make him the main staple in that offense, and he's been a shell of himself.
Listen, I'm telling you, and I know sometimes the words that come out of the Beard's mouth are a little crazy. Sometimes don't really exist in a dictionary, and might be like from a hater. But I talked about what was going on in Dallas. I want to say it was 3 years ago when I started really looking at the players that they had and the contracts that they were giving out and starting to give out, and how like their window was closing. Everybody was like, what do you mean their window is closing? Like Dax Young, and they got Zeke and Cooper, and they just drafted Lamb. And I was like, it's the way they were handing out the bag. It created so many holes. And Cooper, the Zeke deal was all god awful.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that the Dak deal was bad, but I just think that
in hindsight, $40 million a year. I mean, it's just the way that he underperforms in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, are we really gonna say he underperformed?
Yeah, we got to. You go out there like this, man, playing first of all, you committed and told people you were not going to throw 10 interceptions this year, and you went out there and you did it. And then you come into the playoffs and you throw 2 interceptions. That's not giving your team the best chance to win.
I will not argue with that. Yeah. But I mean, is Dak going to end up being Kirk Cousins, where Kirk Cousins and Dak just going to sit back and not be horrible, but not be elite and make $500-600 million?
The one similarity I think this has with what's happening with New York with the contract is, look, if you don't have an elite player at the quarterback position, you need to reevaluate the quarterback position. And I think more and more now when we see deals like Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones being one of them, Jalen Hurts being another, who's a guy that I've never said is elite, but I said was knocking on the door, right? There are other quarterbacks. If you're not giving them the deal, especially after their rookie contract, I think you could be making a terrible mistake. And now in Dak Prescott's situation, I believe he's going to be entering his 9th year.
Is it 9 years?
Yeah, he's the longest tenured quarterback with the same team, and I think it's 9 years now. I think he's 8 years with the Dallas Cowboys. He'll be going into his 9th year, I thought. It's something like that. So, are you going to go and commit top dollar market money to a guy that is not elite? I hate to say it, because Dak Prescott has had, of the last 3 seasons, he has had 2 great years. But I don't think when it comes to elite, and this is why I will always tell people, man, wins is a quarterback stat. I know that I am not in the majority on that, but this is why. Elite quarterbacks win their team's games. When you look at Lamar Jackson, and I know his playoff record right now, just 1 playoff win, that does not scream to this point I'm about to make, but having over an 80% win percentage in the regular season for a guy like Lamar Jackson, who's been in the league now for 5 seasons, 6 seasons, and he's on his way to being an elite quarterback, if not already one of them. Dynamic skill set that just jumps off the screen. With Dak Prescott, I think that's been the thing with him the whole time. It's like, that's why that running joke was going around when you saw all the different type of Kirk Cousins. You had Derek Carr, who's Kirk Cousins with eyeliner. You had Daniel Jones, who was like falling Kirk Cousins or whatever it was. You had Dak Prescott, who was black Kirk Cousins, and all these different jokes. But all those guys fall into a category of, we're good quarterbacks, but we're not elite. And I definitely think, the market skews these things. The market will have you paying top dollar for a shitty house.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it is.
Great analogy.
And that's why I say, coming into this year, I had no problem signing Daniel Jones, right? But when even with Tiki Barber, when he was on New York Revival with all of us, I went up there, and the first question I asked him was how much you think a guy like Daniel Jones will command in the offseason when it's time to get him paid. And Tiki even said out his mouth around $20 million. So I was like, bet, right? I'm like, $20 million. I was like, yeah, I see that as well. The Giants go on that year to win a playoff game. They overexceed all of that, right? And then we start hearing rumors that Daniel Jones is going to want more than the franchise tag. Then we start hearing, hey, his camp said they want $45 million a year. And then it's, I think he's going to land a $40 million contract. And that's what made me go left on it. That's what made me say, okay, if we're going to pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year, how are we going to look at guys like Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew, Marcus Mariota, even Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco now? All these dudes are getting paid under $5 million a year. There's a discrepancy in the market. And that's not Daniel Jones' fault. You got to go out there and ask for the bag 100%, right? But at the end of the day, if I'm a GM, and I'm not a GM, I try to play Twitter GM every now and again, right? Give myself my props, right? If I'm a GM, I got to weigh those things out and making my conclusion on it. Like, I'm going to pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year to put up less touchdowns than a guy like Baker Mayfield. Even looking at Marcus Mariota when he was with the Atlanta Falcons, he played in 12 games. He had more touchdown passes than Daniel Jones. The yardage looked around the same. The turnovers didn't. Now, he did throw the ball and to the other team a lot more than Daniel Jones did. But I look at a lot of variables there as well. Marcus Mariota was at the top of the league when it came to intended air yards. Arthur Smith is terrible over there. He's got Marcus Mariota, whose skill set is predicated on running the ball first, throwing the ball over 12 yards down the field on any given throw. So I just think that the market skews things. And I'll say it again, man. The market will have you buying a shitty house, and then you start looking under the hood, and you got pipes leaking, and you got, drywall falling apart. You got drop ceilings falling. You got cracks in the foundation. You know about that from the old crib. Homie's like, yeah, if you want to buy the house, you can buy the house. I'm like, bro, I'm good. I'm not buying a house that's got the grout cracking on the back of the bricks on the back of the crib and whatnot. You got little holes in there, little mice getting through and whatnot, all these different things, right? So you got to be able to assess that as a GM and make the correct decision. So I do think it'd be a mistake to extend Dak Prescott because right now,
what is he going to ask for?
More than he got on that last contract because of the market.
Which was what, $40 million? What's he going to get? $60 million? You can't do it, right?
You can't do it.
All right, let me ask you a quick question. Are you extending Tua after the Miami Dolphins?
Ooh, that's a tough decision right there. Look, man, if I'm a GM right now, I put the pressure on the quarterback. People were like, and I can only say this now from experience, from what happened with Daniel Jones. If you think you're worth $45 million, go test the market. I'm not paying you that much. When it comes to Tua, if the market says by the time we get to next year it's $45 million, there's no way I'm paying Tua $45 million a year. And I think that he's a pretty damn good quarterback.
And he led the National Football League in passing yards.
He did. He's got great weapons over there. To me, he's not elite. And I think it's in the intangibles with Tua. It's a little bit more obvious with him than a lot of the other quarterbacks. He's a great anticipation type of thrower, but he does not have the arm strength, I think, that is required to be elite in this league if you cannot run the ball from the quarterback position. Tua's not running the ball.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting one. I did see a quick question about big shout out to Darren. Says, where's the beard from? And residence now. I am from straight from the slums of Wheaton, Maryland.
Straight from the slums of Wheaton.
Straight from the slums of Wheaton, Maryland. Currently residing in the trenches of Northeast DC.
Facts. I like that. You got to chop that up, make that a little slogan. That's what's up. I like the way you worded that.
I know.
Why I probably ask you that is probably because I remember when we were younger, especially people were like, are you from like Louisiana? Where are you from? Your twang is not from around here.
People always, I remember being in New York, people would think I was from Louisiana. But when I go down to Louisiana, people would think I was from New York. It was so weird.
Yeah. Weird. It'd be like that. You got that twang, man. I don't know what it is.
It's Tim Twang.
That Tim Twang. That's a wild one right there. Yeah, shout out Ridiculous Nicholas in the building one time. I see you, fam. Just to talk about little Daniel Jones before we dip out of here real quick. I just think some fans are loyal to a fault, and it's a faith thing. And I can speak from firsthand experience on that. Like, you want your guy to win. I think for different fans, it takes a lot more for them to get off of the mountain of it being like a bad take And they're willing to just like completely die on it. I used to be like that when I was a lot younger, and it just seems like the loyalty in our fan base is a little bit too strong. I tell people, just stand on business, man. Just say you got faith in the guy. Don't be trying to convince me he's better than Lamar Jackson and shit like that. Just don't do that. Like that's when you start to look delusional.
For me, it's two things. And I speak on this from a little bit as a Commanders fan, right? I think one of the biggest things is it's hard to jump ship from a guy you drafted unless they're putting up like Zach Wilson numbers, right? Because you're not only invested as a fan, but you're invested as an organization, and then you're double down now as a fan because you're invested in the draft pick and you're invested in the organization. So for you, it's like you know how bad you want your team to draft a quarterback and that quarterback be the guy, and you're watching him from the day he walks across that stage and holds up that jersey till to the very end.
And to be able to say, like, I had faith in this guy from day one.
Yeah, that was my guy. Like, it's just a thing of like, it's different, like, when you draft a guy. And I think the other thing is the flashes. It's so difficult to get off of the word potential, right? Yeah. It's so difficult. Like, when you see a guy who's just like on the verge, you don't want to give up on the verge. It's FOMO. It's FOMO.
I've learned that on this podcast. From 2019 to now, I've learned that here. Like, when you see a guy and he not showing you he elite. Like Josh Allen, bro, year 3, it was like, oh, that's a bad,
A 52-yard touchdown run yesterday.
Yeah, bro. Faked on the slide a little bit, like, gotcha. Kept it pushing. You got to love it. I think that even guys like Joe Burrow, they've shown you, like, yeah, I'm him. And if a quarterback can't show you that he's him, you shouldn't be overly invested in him at all.
Yeah, and I think
you could look at him as a bridge to get to where you need to go, but that's that. And that's why my takes of I was being very convinced on Trevor Lawrence, I feel like. And it's not to say that he's some bad quarterback, but I don't think he screams elite.
I'm not ready. Here I am. I'm not ready to give up on Trevor Lawrence. Yep. I'm not. To me, Trevor Lawrence, like, the eye test on Trevor Lawrence is a lot better than the eye test on Dale Jones. So I want to take my right to
but
not
then even
be
think
ready
about
on
comparing
him.
it to a guy like a Tua. It's not that much better than a guy like Tua.
Yeah, you're very true.
But I'm in that same bracket.
You're also talking to a Tua guy. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, I'm a Tua guy, bro. I thought, I love the way that he can anticipate with those throws, man. But the thing is he's not a runner.
You said it, though. Like, and I think this is something that I've come around on, obviously over time, but even more so with Sam Howell. Like, it's like Sam Howell, it's not that Sam Howell, I said this, and I said, it's not that Sam Howell didn't show me that it's not that Sam Howell showed me he's not the guy.
Yeah.
But Sam Howell didn't show me that he was the guy.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And that's it. Like, that's all you need to know.
Eyes. As soon as, and like stats and all that stuff is great, right? All that's great. But like, when I saw Mike Vick come into this league, I was like, that's a guy.
Yeah.
The stats didn't say it, right? If you just look at him from a passing perspective, Mike Vick's stats didn't say it. I was like, that's a guy. I'll die on this mountain too. When I look at Justin Fields, I still think, I'm like, yo, nah, that dude's a guy, even though he's struggling. And I guess you could say it's struggling. Injuries definitely being a problem, and just being able to be a good passer in this league, Justin Fields is looking terrible at that, right? But when I see the skill set, the dynamic running, the arm talent, because it's not like this kid is struggling to throw the ball like a guy like Tua, where you got to rely on the anticipation. To me, Justin Fields got the velocity. He's got the arm talent. He can avoid pressure, pocket manipulation, and maneuvering. This dude is one of the most dynamic runners in the league, right? But it just ain't working. It's not to say that just because you have the skill set does not mean you're going to be an elite quarterback in this league. You need a lot of things to go right. And I think Josh Allen is a good example of that. 2 years, it was like, ooh, dude looks like he's struggling out here. They got him as wide receiver 1. Rest is history. Josh Allen showed you he's one of the best quarterbacks in this league. And I still, till this day, a lot of people put Joe Burrow over Josh Allen last year, and I never could quite do it. I need my quarterback to be well-rounded. I like these quarterbacks that can run the ball. They got the arm talent and strength, right? And Josh Allen has all those things over guys like Justin Herbert and over guys like Joe Burrow.
And listen, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the in the chat right now. I just want to say, like, listen, the whole Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts thing, we gotta have to put it to rest, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Jalen Hurts
is it the JCNYC one?
Yes, Jalen Hurts is light years ahead of Daniel Jones. Okay,
he is, you look at Hurts losing his star wide receiver. And look at what happens, right? You blitz him and he rattles.
Not once was Jalen Hurts rattled.
That's the thing. I don't even think he was rattled in this
Not
game.
once.
The one play I'll say you can maybe say is the safety.
Yeah.
That's it, right? But outside of that, the dude tried to stay in there and make the throws. When you look at the numbers, it's like you wouldn't even think that he was being pressured as much as he was. He was only sacked 3 times in this game. Pressure bust pipes, though. I will say that.
Yeah.
And I think Jalen Hurts was out there trying to do his damnedest to win this game.
And listen,
you don't see a guy fold and have Devonta Smith go out there and be the best player on the field.
No.
I thought Jalen Hurts played a decent game, but his team around him was definitely pathetic.
And Giants fans, you got to stop moving the goalpost, okay?
Big time.
Because a couple of months ago, Eagles had the best offensive line in the National Football League. Now it's Eagles O-line is pretty good.
See, I think that this take is JC, I challenge you to go back, right? And just go on YouTube and look at the all 22 from that game and count up how many times they blitz more players on that Bucs defense than the Philadelphia Eagles keep in on offense, and tally that up. And that'll tell you, it's not that they have a bad O-line. Come on, man. Like, saying the Philadelphia Eagles have a bad O-line is just crazy in its own right there. But just go and look at it from that perspective. And if you look at every play like that and you come back and you still got the same take, we could agree to disagree on that one. But I just think the protection up front, it's not an issue of the Eagles having bad O-line play. It's their scheme did not work against what the Bucs brought to them.
Yeah, and I remember I said Jalen Hurts is going to start getting the Dak treatment. Yeah, it's all over the place. People say
it's starting. It's definitely
Hurts is not as good as. Big shout out to James for the $2 super chat. Daniel Jones, Trevor, same numbers after 48 games. Yeah, it's an asterisk.
Yeah, I did see the comparisons for sure. The one thing I'll say about that is with Trevor Lawrence, that first year was a nightmare. They thought he was going to be a bust. And I think it goes to show you what coaching can do. Urban Meyer had
and
Trevor
this
Lawrence
is the biggest
absolute dog shit.
The biggest difference in having the same numbers after 48 games is the trajectory of those numbers. Daniel Jones was up and is going down.
Oh, then down, yeah.
Trevor Lawrence was down and going up.
Still going up, yeah.
They might be at the same place, right? But the trajectory in which they're getting to that place is just completely opposite directions.
Yeah, and then how Daniel Jones got to the 48 games is another thing you could look up, too. Daniel has dealt with a lot more injuries that have sidelined him over Trevor Lawrence, for one. And, you're looking at a guy who's going into year 6. Is that right? Holy
Daniel
hell.
Jones?
Daniel Jones is going into year 6.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that's crazy. And we got another one from JC. Big shout out to JC one
Big
time.
shout out to JCNYC with a $5 super chat. Says DJ did better with practice squad receivers. You take 1-star receiver and look at the outcome. Eagles O-line is pretty good. Come on, man.
Eagles O-line is really good. They're really good. Daniel Jones did better with practice squad receivers. So you think that Daniel Jones' season last year was better than Jalen Hurts' season last year? I guess that's what he's saying, or better than this year.
I think what he's saying is that Daniel Jones, what he's saying is that Jalen Hurts didn't perform in this game without A.J. Brown, but Daniel Jones did it with practice squad receivers.
I don't think there's anything to take away from Daniel Jones' 2022 season. It was a good season, but it wasn't a great season to me. It was a good season. It was solid outing from Daniel Jones, and I think it showed you the capabilities of what it could look like if he's playing, at his best play. But I do think that, with Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts is just a better quarterback. He's more decisive. He's not scared to take the deep shots. And in return, that's why he makes those big plays. And regardless of the wide receiver talent, even a guy like Tyrod Taylor showed you that if you come in here and throw the ball deep to these New York Giants wide receivers, they're going to make some plays. And in return, his deep ball succession rate was one of the highest in the league. Tyrod Taylor. Daniel Jones gets out there and he just doesn't want to pull the trigger. Like, if you think that right now you would take Daniel Jones over Jalen Hurts, I don't know what to tell you. I would take Jalen Hurts over Daniel Jones right now because he's got more of the it factor. He's a better leader. He has more command of the offense. And I just trust him more, to be honest. I just trust Jalen Hurts more, behind center than I do a guy like Daniel Jones. But, yeah, he has better weapons. You could definitely say that. Better surrounding cast. And I think that the Philadelphia Eagles were smart enough to build around him because they have faith in him.
Yeah, I listen to. For me, I think there's 10 quarterbacks in between Jalen Hurts and Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones. There's probably 10 quarterbacks in between those two. So for me, it's like they don't even belong in the same sentence.
Yeah, not anymore. And even if you think that this was a down year from Jalen Hurts, the man had 38 touchdowns, bro. Yeah. I don't know
how many other people have more. And the other thing is too is like I see Pete in the chat. It's like for me, like I can't call a quarterback who's won like 75% of his games, has scored like 4 times the amount of touchdowns and turnovers, has been to a Super Bowl, a playoff in his first 2 years as a starter, both years. And I just can't call him ass. It doesn't make
that's more of like he kind of just using the slang, I feel like. But he says that Jones is decent and that Jalen Hurts is ass. I can't argue with you on that one. I just can't argue. If you would say maybe they're closer in, performance and whatnot than people think, I might be able to give you a little leeway on that. But saying that Jalen Hurts is ass, I don't know. I mean, to me, it just didn't look like he was the main culprit of why they were so bad yesterday on offense.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
and the Philadelphia Eagles offense, I will say this: they rely too much, to a fault, on their great weapons to win those one-on-one matchups. And when they didn't have their best weapon on the field, they didn't have another game plan. They didn't have an offensive coordinator that could scheme it up. Yeah. Nobody was open.
Yeah, tough to win games like that.
Yeah, and PG said, excuse the slang a little bit. Yeah, I get it, man. People don't have faith in Jalen Hurts. And I think if you're the kind of fan who really doesn't like a runner, especially, and you just want pocket passing, Daniel Jones, checks the boxes a little bit more, I feel like, than a guy like Jalen Hurts did, especially coming into the league. But, man, the proof is in the pudding.
Hey.
The proof is in the pudding.
I love chocolate pudding. Do you eat any other pudding besides chocolate pudding? You try a little vanilla pudding?
Some vanilla pudding, yeah.
We were talking about this guy. Big shout out to my barber, Jimmy. He's a lifer Detroit Lions fan. Look at it. He changed his profile picture. He sent me this video, and it's a screenshot from the video he sent me. He was at the game in Detroit for his bachelor weekend, man. Big shout out to my guy, Jimmy, man. Congratulations. I know it feels good as a Detroit Lions fan. You deserve it. I hope you have fun, man.
Yeah, you and Sean, both of y'all Lions fans, man. I know y'all were definitely happy about that one, man. Big salute to y'all. It's been a while, man. Best of luck to y'all in the next round, too, man. I'm going to be rooting for y'all, Jimmy.
Yep. Big shout out to Matt with the $4.99 super chat. This is the Eagles window closing. Their team can't get much better than how it was the past 2 years. I will say it is. It's not actively coming down. It's like a slow door from it's
Indiana
a slow
Jones
roller.
Where the hat got on the other side of the concrete door. You got to reach back and grab the hat and put it back on.
Yeah.
Look, if they can get, and this is just my opinion on here, you can go fact check it as much as you want and dig into all the tape that you want. That offensive philosophy is broken. They got to get somebody in there that can play to Jalen Hurts' strengths. There's too much talent on that offense. DeAndre Swift, A.J. Brown, Devonta, Jalen Hurts.
They need a mad scientist.
They need a mad scientist. They need an offensive guru. A lot of people asked this question last year, and I was giving Nick Sirianni a pass because if you show up day in and day out for your job and you get your team in position to a Super Bowl, I can't say it's a free ride, okay? I can't say that. But Nick Sirianni has not shown you that he is a mastermind on either side of the ball. I've heard this guy talk in interviews pre-draft last year, and he struck me as a guy that really didn't know the X's and O's of the game, and he's relying on other people to kind of implement that within their offense. He dropped the ball on hiring Denard Wilson last year after they lost their defensive coordinator, and he decided to go a different route, and look how that has panned out for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I was one who came into this year and thought that losing their 2 coordinators was not going to be as drastic of an impact on this team as it was, but it absolutely factored in this year. So that window is closing. If they don't go out here and get the right people on that coaching staff to put them in the right position to win games with all this talent, they're going to waste money and they're going to waste the opportunity to go out there and try to get to a Super Bowl.
And the one thing is, they do still have one of the best front offices in the league. So I think, to the second part of this, their team can't get much better. I think their team can get better, and not just from the player standpoint, but it's like Awthentik said, it's going to come down to what changes they make on that coaching staff. Not necessarily just Nick Sirianni, but as a whole, they're going to have to look in themselves. I almost said they're going to have to look at themselves in the window. They're going to have to look at themselves in the mirror and realize that there's something missing on both sides of the ball.
Got to. And I trust Howie Roseman. He's been a really good GM thus far. He knows how to make those moves. I just wonder, cap, situations with them right now, free agents, can you, supplement in the draft for some of these players that you're going to lose? But then also addressing their cornerback too, both their cornerbacks might make that team much better. James Bradbury was one of the worst players on the field in this game. And I don't like to rag on players like that too much, but seeing the way that he was missing tackles and chasing, and granted, we know this as New York Giants fans, you can't put him in man-to-man situations. We saw him get burnt in a bunch of man-to-man situations, and then we saw him thrive, and the New York Giants defense thrive as a top 10 defense that year before Patrick Graham was let go. So James Bradbury definitely not the kind of guy you want to put on an island, and all too frequently I saw him on that island this year with the Eagles.
Yeah. Big shout out to Matt. Appreciate the 4.99 super chat.
Big salute, man. But big shout out to all of y'all, man, for pulling up. I thought this was going to be a short kind of show today, being that we only had to go over 2 games, but definitely almost hit that 2-hour mark one time. The Beard cutting off my clip there one time. The Beard, the way he just be operating that trackpad mouse be ridiculous, bro. 2 fingers.
I did.
But, definitely a good vibe today, man. Big shout out to y'all for pulling up, especially the Giants fans and the Commanders fans, without our teams in the mix here. Beard, and any last words before we get the fam up out of here, man?
Nah, man, listen, tough losses for the NFC East. I wore the fishing jacket vest in honor of all of our teams. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Good stuff from the chat today. Like, the reason why some of these shows go a lot longer is because you guys in the chat and girls in the chat are bringing, really good comments that really open up some debates and interesting conversations. So big shout out to everybody in the chat across all the platforms. We appreciate all the love and all the support. Good luck to all of you who still have teams in the playoffs. I saw a lot of Packers fans today. I know we got James Funk on Facebook as a Packer fan. It's going to be an interesting week ahead. So shout out to everybody who still has a team in the mix.
Big shout out to y'all, man. Y'all know how we end every show over here on Awthentik and The Beard. And, again, big salute to everybody who sparked off that video about Denard Wilson. That thing's doing great numbers. Definitely appreciate y'all rocking out with us on that. But y'all know how we end every show over here, man. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams, because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT, Mr. Combat Jack himself. And that's a wrap, y'all. We will be back with a preview show on Tuesday, or on Thursday. Sorry about that. And we're going to be covering the playoffs. Granted, no more NFC East teams in the mix no more. It's going to be pretty interesting. But until next show, man, y'all enjoy the rest of y'all week. We'll be back at it with a couple of pre-recorded videos this week as well, man. Y'all be good. And again, we appreciate y'all rocking out with us throughout this whole entire season of NFC East football, all the way down until the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys sitting on the couch with me and the Beards, Commanders, and New York Giants. Y'all be good, man. We catch y'all on the next episode, y'all. Peace.